This presentation is on Western Local Land Services Travelling Stock Reserves. It includes background, authorised use, review and management. Part 1, Background. We'll go through definition, history, responsibility and types of TSRs. Travelling Stock Reserves are abbreviated as TSR. They are travelling stock routes and camping places reserved under the Crown Land Management Act of 2016. They are reserves for travelling stock, water reserves, water access or crossing reserves. Stock watering places are another type of TSR. TSRs are parcels of Crown land going along a network of routes and camping areas. They were reserved for the movement of stock in the late 1800s and used by the Australian outback pastoralists to drove stock to capital city markets and between their properties. TSRs are an important part of our landscape with social, economic, environmental and cultural values. Many TSRs follow traditional Aboriginal trade routes and dreaming tracks, storylines or songlines. This map from 1888 shows stock routes and watering points. It is overlaid with the Western region boundary and shows major rivers and major traditional Aboriginal trade routes. In New South Wales, there are almost 2 million hectares of TSR. Local Land Services is responsible for about 27% of those TSRs. Other responsibility lays with Crown Lands with 73%, and a very small percentage with reserve trusts and local councils. The Local Land Services Act of 2013 confers responsibility for TSRs and stock watering places on local land services. This includes responsibility for management and delivery of local land services, which means programs and advisory services associated with travelling stock reserves and stock watering places. Of the 27% of New South Wales TSRs that Local Land Services is responsible for, 89% of those are in the Central and Eastern Division, with 11% in the Western Division. Western Division TSRs differ from TSRs in the Central and Eastern Divisions of New South Wales because most TSR routes overlay Western Lands leases. Western Lands leases were originally established under the Western Lands Act 1901, which was actually the first natural resource legislation put in place due to the fragile nature of the Western Division landscape. Western Lands leases are leased in perpetuity, and any overlaying TSRs are managed as part of the Western Lands lease property. Because these TSRs are no longer used for travelling stock, they are revoked if the Western Lands lease is converted to freehold. This means that the main Western Local Land Services TSR responsibility is stock watering places, abbreviated as SWPs. This is a map of the Western region, showing TSRs that overlay Western Lands leases. The Western Local Land Services Local Strategic Plan outlines how we plan to manage TSRs, including 16 activities to achieve our local strategy. This is an infographic showing Western Local Land Services TSR types. There are TSRs that are only for management, TSRs that are under the care, control and management of local land services, and TSRs that are SWPs, of which Western Local Land Services is the controlling authority. The first type of TSRs are managed TSRs. These TSRs overlay Western Lands lease. They are travelling stock routes, generally not fenced off and are often fenced through, and are part of the Western Lands lease property. The management is by the landholder and Crown Lands. As far as LLS are concerned, we manage these types of TSRs only for the purpose of issuing travelling stock permits. The second type of TSRs are licensed or under a Crown Land management arrangement. These TSRs are not vested to Local Land Services and they are under Crown Land management or licensed to Local Land Services by Crown Lands. So management arrangements are either a management agreement permit, which is more than 3 months and up to 5 years, or a short-term grazing permit, which is less than 3 months. The third type of TSR is vested TSRs. This is where the care, control and management is vested in local land services. Management includes administration of stock permits, reserve use permits or management agreement permits. If the TSRs are unpermitted, management actions are conducted by local land services. These TSRs may also be used for emergency and biosecurity purposes. The final type of TSR are stock watering places, abbreviated as SWPs. These Crown land parcels are declared for watering and depasturing stock. They are gazetted as public watering places and/or travelling stock and camping reserves. They may also be known as government tanks. They don't overlay Western Lands lease, and they're at about a day's walk interval along travelling stock routes. They were gazetted from the 1880s to the present. Management of SWPs is by Western Local Land Services being the controlling authority of any SWP that has not been declared a town water supply or has no specified controlling authority under the Local Land Services Act. SWPs may be leased, however the controlling authority and lessee must supply water to prescribed persons or stock or allow stock to depasture. This slide shows an example of an SWP near Balranald. On the map you can see where the SWP land parcel fits neatly within the Western Lands lease layer, and also this slide shows an example of the old sign. 73 SWPs within the Barkindji Native Title area have been determined as non-exclusive. This means the native title exists alongside other property rights, in this case SWP leases. Native title rights include the right to access, hunt and camp, but not the right to control access and use. Part 2 of this presentation is about authorised use of TSRs. This includes SWP leases, management agreement permits, reserve use permits and stock permits. Any use of a TSR must always be authorised. Under the Local Land Services Act 2013, a person must not, without lawful authority, enter, remain, occupy or make use of a TSR. A stock owner or person in charge of stock must ensure that stock do not walk or graze on a public road without authorised use. The maximum penalty for unauthorised use is, at this stage, $5,500. Authorised use types include SWP lease agreements, management agreement permits, reserve use permits or stock permits. Under the Local Land Services Act, local land services may grant a lease of an SWP. This can be by auction, public tender or other means. We must not grant a lease exceeding 15 years, including extensions. Any lease of an SWP may be transferred. In 2019, a tender was released for leases to the end of September 2023. This was the first time direct tenders were made for SWPs landlocked by property for the purposes of reducing biosecurity risk, increasing lessee security and reducing community conflict. Management agreement permits may be issued on a TSR by auction, public tender or other means. A tender in 2019 meant that management agreement permits were through to the end of September 2023. Some were batched with adjoining SWPs. Reserve use permits may also be issued for the use of a TSR. Reserve use permits in the Western Division are generally for apiary because recreation use is not authorised in the Western Division. Application for apiary permits is through the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries BPAS portal. Then a biosecurity officer assesses the application. Stock permits are the last type of TSR authorisation. There are 4 types of stock permits: walking or slow travel, TSR grazing, roadside grazing or routine stock movement permits. The third part of this presentation focuses on review and management, including planning, assessment, plan of management, local operations plan, and an annual business plan. This infographic is a summary of all review and management by government from 2012 to present. The first review began in 2012 and finished in 2013. The purpose was to improve the management of Crown land and increase the benefit and returns from Crown land to the community. This was conducted by DPI Crown Lands. The second was a state planning framework. The purpose of this was to indicate TSR management following the TSR review. In 2016, the New South Wales Travelling Stock Reserve State Planning Framework was published. It included more integrated management processes for TSRs and provided the framework for development of the TSR Plan of Management. Following the Crown Land Management Review conducted by Crown Lands, Local Land Services conducted their own TSR review. They needed solid evidence about current TSR use and values, which they got by starting a complete mapping exercise of TSRs and confirmed many TSRs were no longer used for their original purpose of travelling stock. Following the Local Land Services TSR review, conservation assessments were done on each TSR in New South Wales. This was using the RAM method, or the Rapid Conservation Assessment method, using a three-part scoring system which included conservation status, landscape context and vegetation condition. Most SWPs within the Western region were rated as a high conservation value. The TSR Statewide Plan of Management was developed by Local Land Services beginning in 2018. The four-point plan includes consistent classification, collaborative action and funding, working with our community, and a quality management system. The TSR Plan of Management used the TSR review categories, each based primarily on travelling stock use, due to the gazetted purpose of TSRs. Other uses and values were also recognised. Each Local Land Services categorised TSRs in their own region. SWPs within the Western region are classified as Category 4. This TSR classification includes the primary use and other use and values, and a flowchart is provided for categorisation. The final product of a statewide TSR classification map is also online as an interactive map. The plan of management includes the local operational plan. This has 9 broad management components which help with management of TSRs. Each Local Land Services completes an annual business plan for their own region each year. This plan details planned activities on TSRs and includes reference to policies, procedures, work instructions and forms. Also within each annual business plan is the regional TSR classification, which is a finer classification determined by grazing method. This allows better local level decision making. So that's almost the end of the presentation. Just to summarise, we know that TSRs in the Western Division mostly overlay Western Lands leases. These TSRs are only managed by Local Land Services for issuing travelling stock permits, and they are revoked with the Western Lands lease conversion to freehold. The other main type of TSR in the Western region are SWPs, and Western Local Land Services is the controlling authority of most stock watering places. TSR use must be authorised, and there's no recreation use authorised in the Western Division. Stock watering place leases and management agreement permits that have been issued expire at the end of September 2023. The main TSR review and planning process went from 2012 to 2020, but continues currently. Conservation assessment showed that most SWPs have a high conservation value. The TSR statewide plan of management includes classification of the uses and values of TSRs. The TSR local operational plan includes goals, metrics and strategies, and the TSR regional annual business plan outlines planned activities and is due annually in July. Thank you for watching this presentation about Western Local Land Services Travelling Stock Reserves. Should you have any further questions or require any more information, please contact me, Karen Hart, TSR Coordinator, on the phone number or the email below. Thank you.